Welcome to the Technical Writing Success Podcast from Curt Robbins, where we help you get smarter than your competition. This is episode 162. I'm Daphne, and joining me is Fred. Today we are tackling, well, another huge shift in the AI landscape. It really feels like every 6 months the ground just completely moves from under us.
It absolutely does. That pace means we constantly have to reevaluate our tools.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to get into today.
We are. We're looking at a new analysis of Google's latest model. The article is titled Tool Review, Google Gemini 3. It was written by our own producer, Curt Robbins, and he published it on LinkedIn on November 30th, 2025.
And the review really puts a sharp question right on the table for all of us in the professional space. Is Gemini 3 actually smarter, or is it just, faster?
Right.
And from what Robbins found after really putting it through its paces, the verdict seems to be that this isn't just another update, it's a whole new chapter.
Okay, so let's unpack that, because the review frames this as a huge pivot point, moving us past what we might call the first generation of AI.
That pivot is the key. It's the move from generative AI to agentic AI. For the last few years, we've had these generative models. They're amazing, but they're passive.
You ask a question, you get an answer.
Exactly. You prompt it. It generates something. Gemini 3 is different. It's designed to be active. It's meant to do things, to run with complex, multi-step plans without you having to hold its hand the whole way.
So it's less like a chatbot and more like a junior coworker.
That's the perfect way to put it. It goes from a chat box to a collaborator.
That sounds incredible, but what's the actual tech that makes that possible? How does it move past just responding?
It all comes down to the core architecture, which Google is calling deepthink. And you should really visualize this as a system that has, like, a built-in planning phase.
So it literally pauses for a second before it answers.
It does. It pauses to reason through a complex problem, it formulates a plan internally, and then it generates the first bit of output. And for what we do, that is so crucial. It dramatically increases the reliability for multi-stage tasks, like, say, migrating a whole documentation set or analyzing 5 different reports to create one summary. It's just less likely to get derailed halfway through.
So deepthink is the engine, but the review also talks about the environment, Google anti-gravity. That name alone sounds pretty intense. It says it turns your development environment into an agent-managed workspace.
It is intense.
Wow.
And yeah, the jargon is a bit of a hurdle, but think of anti-gravity as the operating system for all these AI agents. It's the platform that lets a research agent, a coding agent, and a documentation agent all work together on one project.
Without you having to prompt each one individually at every step.
Right. You give them the high-level goal, and anti-gravity helps them coordinate to get it done.
So if we zoom out a bit, does this make Google the leader now? Are they at the top of the heap for these big Tier 1 models?
That's the million-dollar question. The review brings in some competitive context here, citing the AI governance consultant Basil C. Puglisi.
And what's his take?
He's very impressed, but still ranks Gemini 3 third overall. He sees Anthropic's Claude 4.5 at number 1, then OpenAI's ChatGPT 5.1. So Gemini is firmly in that top tier, but the race is still incredibly tight.
Okay, so it's a major player. Let's get into the features that really make it essential for us. The review starts with something called vibe coding.
Vibe coding is maybe the most immediately useful and honestly fun feature. The idea is you just describe an app or a tool in natural language, what it should feel like, the vibe.
And Gemini 3 just build it.
It takes that vibe, that abstract idea, and then it handles the multi-step planning and coding to spit out a working interactive tool.
I'm just thinking about all the time I've wasted trying to get an interactive diagram to work. For technical writers, that just completely changes the game. You don't have to be a coder anymore to create rich content.
It's a massive time saver. You can create quick tutorials, documentation widgets, small internal tools, all without needing to get a front-end developer involved.
That is huge. Okay, another strength mentioned is multimodal reasoning. We've had models that can see images for a while, but this seems different.
It is. It's about context, not just seeing. It doesn't just know there's a video. It analyzes what's happening in the video within a much bigger picture. The fidelity of its understanding is pretty stunning.
Can you give us an example of that?
Sure. Imagine a QA tester records a 3-minute video of a software bug. You can feed that video to Gemini, and it'll synthesize the entire sequence, identify the user actions, read the text on the screen, and then generate a perfectly structured bug report for you.
Wow.
Or, think about this. You feed it a 500-page scanned PDF of some manual from the 1990s, and it can accurately pull out key procedures and restructure them into a modern format.
That's the real value, isn't it? Processing all these different types of information, video, old text code, and making sense of it all together. And of course, there's the Google Workspace integration.
Of course. It's super tight. The new Gemini agent can orchestrate these really complex tasks across your Drive, your Docs, your calendar. You can give it a single command like, organize my project folder based on the last 30 emails, summarize the key decisions, and schedule follow-up meetings.
That's incredible. And the review also mentions speed, especially the Flash variants.
Yes, for real-time stuff, speed is everything. And the Flash versions are apparently incredibly fast, which finally makes Google a real contender for things like live customer support chats, where any lag is a deal breaker.
Okay, so we've heard the good. Let's talk about the bad, because the review was very clear about some pretty serious limitations.
For sure. The first one is what it calls domain weakness. Gemini 3 is a great generalist, but it still lags a bit in really specialized reasoning. The review specifically calls out finance and law.
So you still need a human expert to check its work in those areas.
Absolutely. You still need human oversight. It's not ready to be a lawyer or a financial analyst on its own.
And then the problem that haunts all of these models, hallucinations.
Unfortunately, yes, they're still there. And the review found a really specific, kind of worrying grounding issue during the tests.
What was it?
Apparently, the model oddly refuses to believe that it is 2025.
Wait, what?
Yeah, because its training data was cut off in 2024, in some tests, it just flat out refused to acknowledge the current year.
But hold on. If it can't get a basic fact like the current year right, how can a big company trust it with something like a compliance report where the date is, one of the most important pieces of information? That feels like a major break in trust.
It is. It raises a huge question about reliability. It means that even with all the power of deepthink, the final output still has to be treated as a first draft. It shows that anchoring these models in the present moment is still a really, really hard problem.
And beyond that, this whole shift to agentic AI sounds a lot more complicated for the user.
That's the third weakness, a much steeper learning curve. You're not just typing in a prompt anymore. You're configuring agents. You're managing what the review calls thought signatures.
Thought signatures? What on earth are those? That sounds like something out of science fiction.
I know, right? But a thought signature is basically a custom instruction set you create for an agent. So you could have one agent that always writes in a formal legal tone and another that's creative. It gives you incredible control. But managing all those profiles is way more complex than just chatting with a bot.
It's moving from a consumer tool to a truly professional one.
Exactly.
Let's take a brief break for a special message from our producer, Curt Robbins.
Hi, this is Curt Robbins. First, thanks for listening. I truly appreciate your support. I want to let you know that I'm currently accepting new clients. My rates are affordable, and I have more than 25 years of experience working for enterprise companies like Microsoft, Northrop Grumman, Oracle, PNC Bank, FedEx, USAA, and Wells Fargo, among many others. If you want to improve your IT documentation and communications, hire me. I deliver fast, know how to use AI to improve efficiency and accuracy, and love going the extra mile to satisfy my clients. Thank you for subscribing and listening. Back to you, Daphne and Fred.
Welcome back to the Technical Writing Success Podcast. Okay, before the break, we were digging into the strengths and weaknesses of Gemini 3, including that bizarre issue with it not knowing what year it is. Now let's talk about who this is really for. Who benefits the most?
The review does a great job breaking this down. First up, large enterprise organizations. Gemini 3 is really built for them from the ground up, with all the security and compliance governance a CTO could want.
And for them, the big win has to be breaking down those internal data silos. Oh, absolutely. They can use these new deep research agents to connect securely to their own massive databases. Think about things like BigQuery or their Salesforce instance.
So it can synthesize internal reports that used to take a team of analysts weeks to compile.
In minutes. And for technical communicators, that means you can point it at a legacy code base and have it generate migration documentation automatically. It's a huge force multiplier inside a big company.
Okay, what about the other end of the spectrum? Startups and small companies.
For them, it's all about speed and saving money. And that's where vibe coding is such a game changer.
Right, the rapid prototyping.
Exactly. A tiny team can build a working prototype of their product or just a critical internal tool in a single afternoon just by describing it. You get to bypass hiring expensive developers early on.
That kind of speed can literally be the difference between a startup making it or not.
For sure. And finally, the review looks at independent consultants and freelancers. For us, Our time is our inventory, and the agent features here are a massive productivity booster.
Just outsourcing all that personal admin work.
Totally. Imagine an agent that triages your inbox, drafts replies in your personal style, and schedules all your meetings. That frees you up to focus on the actual billable work.
And the review mentioned the free tier being useful too?
Yeah, in Google AI Studio, you can use it to process these huge client documents, 100-page PDFs, complex requirement docs, and have it pull out the key points in seconds. Just cuts down on so much manual analysis time.
So we've covered the whole thing, the huge architectural shift with DeepThink, the cool new features, but also the complexity and that weird grounding problem. What's the final verdict for a professional communicator?
The conclusion is pretty firm. Gemini 3 is an essential Tier 1 model. It successfully makes that leap from just being a chatbot to being a genuine coworker. The rough edges are there, but they don't take away from the massive jump in what it could do.
And the final call to action for enterprise communicators is that this is a mandatory upgrade.
Absolutely mandatory. And that's because of two things. The ability to generate interactive documentation on the fly with vibe coding, and the power to synthesize all that multimodal data, the videos, the old manuals, the internal reports. It's an investment in efficiency that you really can't afford to skip anymore.
Which brings us to the big question this all raises for us. If these AI agents, powered by DeepThink and managed by anti-gravity, can now run projects using their own persistent thought signatures, what's the next critical skill that we as technical communicators have to master to stay essential in that kind of workflow? That's something to think about. Thank you for listening to the Technical Writing Success podcast from Curt Robbins, where we help you get smarter than your competition. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, and share. We'll see you next time.